the background information. So where is current Metro Vancouver housing price is at? So actually since 2019, Vancouver is ranked as the second most affordable metropolitan city around the world. You can tell from this listing website, which I screenshot from some real estate listing. So by this month, August, this is the median price in some jurisdictions in Metro Vancouver, and the top one is Golden Island with median price of 5 million. Second, West Vancouver, 2.6 million, and if you're interested in Vancouver as well, it's about $1 million as well. And this graph shows the relative price change. So basically, compared to last August, well, from last year, how does the price changes? So you can see on the top 10 jurisdictions, the housing market increased at least by 8%. And again, the top is the Bowling Island. It increased over 200% relative to last year from August as well. So yeah, and considering really in Metro Vancouver, the median individual income is about $65,000, if the number makes sense. So it really, your yearly income, we're going to buy 7% of the property in Vancouver, which ranks around like $1 million, and it takes 14 years to fully own a property in City of Vancouver as well. So just trying to compare with the Canada-wise median. So in Canada, the median number is 5.4, meaning that usually people or Canadians need 5 years to fully purchase property. So you can tell compared to Metro Vancouver, it's really high. It's like Metro Vancouver really have huge housing unaffordability crisis, especially compared to Canada-wide. And so really our goal of this project is trying to track the price changes and also the Metro Vancouver housing changes by years and by jurisdictions, by census tract and by the property type as well. And really we're trying to pave the way for incoming researchers to understand what is driven the heating market in Metro Vancouver and possibly direct the future policymaking direction as well. Right, so quickly go through the data I've been using. So currently we are using two databases. So the first one is called British Columbia Assessment Data from 2020, or we just call it BCA data. So it is basically include the tax information of all the properties. So in this data set, it includes 22 jurisdictions in Metro Vancouver and about or above 400 census tracts. So one census tract is a small geographical area, usually contain 2,500 people to 8,000 people. So overall, in Metro Vancouver, we have around 20,000 commercial properties. So a lot of them are not residence related. So there are car washes and malls. For the purpose of this data analysis, we're just going to focus on the residence related, so the commercial rentals. And mainly in commercial properties, most of them are apartment blocks. And we also have over 700,000 residential properties as well. Mainly those properties contains single family dwellings. And we also took the initiative to find some other open data online because we really want to understand how Vancouver redeveloped over the years. So one data set we found is the redevelopment permit data. So every year when City of Vancouver issue a redevelopment permit, it contains all the description in that data set as well. So that data set is contains all the permit from 2017 and since. So again, quickly go through the data processing. So first up, we really just clean the BCA data. It contains about 12 tables and tons of variables. So what we've done is trying to connect the bits together to answer the following questions. And secondly, we geocoded or finding the latitude and longitude of all the properties I've shown before. So we geocoded about like 1 million of them. So it takes some time as well, and also money. So thanks for DSSG for providing the funding. And of course, some data clearly involved in this process as well, because the Google API doesn't give correct address or a geocode sometimes. And third step, we merge the BCA data and the redevelopment data for more information, for more rich data. And lastly, we use this geographic information system trying to analyze the spatial information across different jurisdictions and across different census.
Okay, so as part of our data processing, we try to link the BCA data with the redevelopment data. So for the first half of the project, we used an open data called the BC major project inventory data, which includes private and public sector construction projects in BC. However, the limitation with this data was that it was very time consuming to actually link it with the BCA data. So for the second half of the project, we used this open data called issued building permits for the city of Vancouver, which includes information on all building permits starting in 2017. So for the method of linking the BCA data with the building permits data was that it was based on address, which we had to match the format of the addresses between the two data sets. And for example, we had to consistently use abbreviations such as like converting street to SD or west to W, and consistently using capital letters and ordinal numbers such as first, second, third, fourth, and etc. And we had to also use the consistent address format of street number, street direction, street name, and the street type. For example, 4545.W and yeah, so after merging the two data sets, we get our final data set, which has its own limitations because the permits data is often missing unit numbers. For example, in this example right here for this address of 1.1128W Houston Street, if it has two unit numbers, 501 and 502, they each have their own unique folio ID. However, we see that the permit data is repeating for both units, and this could actually cause limitations in our analysis and our calculations, because for example, we can calculate the number of folio IDs that have actually gone through redevelopment.
So I'll briefly introduce you the evolution of the housing market. So first one is the residential average price change. So price change is calculated as the difference of the sale price from the sale records of each property, and then and the average is being calculated from the year interval. So we have divided into 7 year intervals, as you can see there. So given that each sale transaction has a sale date. So the general trend of the residential properties has an increase in average price over the year. However, there is a decrease in several census tracts in both the 1976 and the 1986 year interval. And the older year intervals tend to have a lower price change. So by 2011, there is an increase in 100,000 and millions of dollars that starting in regions of like Kerrisdale, University Endowment Lands, Western North Vancouver, and also Burnaby. So by 2016, around 5% of all the census tracts in Metro Vancouver have an average price change of over $1 million compared to 1.5% in 2011 to 2015. So just a small demo of this interactive layered map. Yeah. So as you can, So as you can see, it's starting from the older time intervals. The lightly colored scale means that the price change is less, but then gradually you see there's a little bit of white, so that means there's a decrease. But then gradually over time, it still increases. And then to the most recent one, you can see darker patches of colors, which means that the increase is over millions. Yeah. And this is for the commercial average price change for commercial properties. So similar to the residential average price change map, the general trend is that it's also increasing over the years. And so from 2006, more regions had price changes that started to increase drastically by $1,700,000. Starting in 2011, high price changes mostly are concentrated in Kitsilano, Fairview, downtown, parts of North Vancouver, and also in Westminster areas. So by 2016, 26% of all the census tracts in Metro Vancouver have an average price change over $1 million, compared to 9% from 2006 to 2010. And so another demo of the commercial map. So yeah, there's another increase, darker patches of color. And so as you can see, if you zoom into this area, yeah, as I said, it's the downtown area and also, yeah, parts of the surrounding areas of downtown. Okay, so the average sale time interval. So the sale time is being calculated as the difference in the sale date of each transaction. So the difference gives the first sale and the time between the first sale and also the next sale. And so in residential property, the sale time interval basically increased over time, but in the commercial properties map, there's not much of a pattern change over time. And then in 2016 to 2020, 76% of all census tracts have properties that were sold within 5 to 10 years, but then only and compared to 2006 to 2010, there were only like 20% that were sold. So there is actually an increase in the number of regions for 5 to 10 years. And in 2016 to 2020, only 3.5% were sold greater than 10 years. As for the commercial properties, 2016 to 2020, 11% of census tracts that were sold within 5 to 10 years. So in 2016, only 15% were sold greater than 10 years. So there are more regions in the commercial properties map that are like sold at a older time interval. Yeah, so again, this is the sale time for the residential ones. So as you can see, the sale time gradually increases. And you can see that the color tone for each of the region, basically for Metro Vancouver, it's between 5 to 10 years, and they're pretty similar. And so this is for the commercial one. As you can see, the dark red color scales, they're more obvious compared to the residential ones. Some of them have sale time intervals of around 30 years or so. So just a quick demonstration again. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Here we go. So after understanding the evolution of Metro Vancouver's housing market, I'm trying to focus a bit on the demand and supply side of the market as well. Especially at this moment, we want to understand the commercial rentals and how many are there in Metro Vancouver. So again, background information. In Metro Vancouver, we have around 2.5 million populations, and the rental rate across regions are 36%. So that gives us about 1 million people are living in rentals. So which is quite large demand, as you can see. So again, just trying to give you some figure here. So in this data set, originally we have over 20,000 commercial properties, but again, most of them are car wash and malls and all that, not for human living, obviously. And we're trying to clean a bit to residence type. So in the end, we come up with around 5,000 commercial rentals in Metro Vancouver. And also, we recategorize them as well. So originally, we have over 400 categories, and we clean it and reclassified it into 10, which is shown here. So the top one is the apartment. So most of the commercial rentals in Metro Vancouver are apartments. And we also have this mixed buildings of commercial and residential as well. But so for this graph, I'm trying to show you the count of the commercial rentals by the jurisdictions, and the x-axis is the ratio between the number of renters in that jurisdiction divided by the number of commercial rental counts in that jurisdiction. So you can tell the top three are Surrey, meets McDowell's, and Richmond. So take Surrey as example. So the number 800 means roughly, in Surrey, roughly 800 people are theoretically sharing one commercial rental, which is quite a lot. And the least is in City of Vancouver, because City of Vancouver has the largest number of commercial rents. But here's a limitation, of course. We really calculate, we really ballpark the number of renters in each jurisdiction, basically by multiplying 36%, which is the renter rate, with the population in that jurisdiction. So this number may vary if we know precisely how much or how many renters in that jurisdiction. Yeah, so this is the distribution. So where are those commercial rental buildings? So again, you can see most of them are concentrated in Metro Vancouver regions, and the blocks are the census tract borderlines. And we found the top 5 census tracts, so indicating which census tract have the most concentrated rentals. And those are concentrated in neighborhood Marple down here, Fairview, and Kissilano. So they're like side-to-side neighborhoods. Okay, so that was the demand side of the housing market. I want to go ahead for the supply side of the housing market. So we are going to focus on the idea of property flipping. So here we're trying to identify how many owners are trying to flip their properties and put on the market for a higher price sale. Again, what is flipping? So flipping is referred to this idea of purchase of an asset and improve it and resell it for a higher price, then you can earn some profits from there. So if the volume of flipping is large, that's I think it's a driver of the housing price in that market as well. So I think by the midterm presentations, there was one person mentioned that the marker for flipping property is around 15%. So meaning that if a property increase, the price of property increased by 15% between sales, that means the property is potentially a flipper. So we're trying to understand, is that a good benchmark for Metro Vancouver? So this graph shows the median percentage change in sales price across the years. So let's just focus on the blue line, the residential part. So starting from 2005, you can see the rate of price change accelerated, right? You can see there's a jump after this year. And by 2020, basically on average, a property's price increased by 35% compared to its last sale. So we would argue that 15% perhaps is very low benchmark or marker to identify flippers in Metro Vancouver, because a lot of them, or half of them increase over that threshold. So that's why we're trying to come up with our own identifiers. And we have 3 index here. The first one is the difference between the sales price and purchase price divided by the difference between the sales date and purchase date. So a larger number indicating this property has been sold, or the price of this property increased in a shorter period of time. So potentially that's a flippers. And we really just randomly, we kind of choose a benchmark. We say, okay, if this property is listed on the top 3 in this index, we would just say, okay, that's potentially a flippers. And index 2, we targeted for properties which were sold within 1 year of purchase. And we calculated the relative price change of that property compared to the average price change in that census tract. So any number larger than 0 means that this property, its price increased faster than the average price increase in that census tract or the neighborhood. And the third index, again, we targeted on specifically the city of Vancouver properties because we're trying to merge this BCA data with the redevelopment data. So we argue that any property which were sold within 1 year of its redevelopment approval, we will just assume it's a flipping property because we assume that those buyers purchase or get the permit to improve the property for sole reason of selling out at a higher price and selling out quickly as quickly as they can. So in the end, we get this 3 list of potential flipping properties, and then we sort of find the overlapping properties in this 3 list and get a full list of our suspected flipper properties. So here is a number. For residential, there are 0.6% of the property are identified as flippers, and for commercial, roughly the same number as well. But just because the number for commercial is just too small, we just figure, okay, perhaps we won't see any trends or any point of doing analysis here. So for the following slides, I'm just going to focus on this 10,000 residential flipping properties for the rest of them. Okay. So how does this flippers price change? So on this graph, it shows the median price change of that flippers. So the median across over the years from 66 to 2020 is about 150%, meaning that once a property is flipped and resale on the market, the price changed by 150% compared to its previous sales. Quite high jump. And this graph shows the build age of that flippers at that sales. So again, obviously the build age decreased over the years. So at the end of the time bracket since 2016, so the number here is around 2, meaning that when this property was sold, it only filled within 2 years. So we can tell there's a quicker turnover rate. So more houses are sold, or more flipping houses are sold quickly once they were built. And this is a distribution of the residential flippers across the years. So again, you can see an increase in the trend that there are more people are flipping their properties, and the color-coded are the type of the properties. Prominently, you can see the red color, which is the single-family dwelling. So most people are flipping single-family dwelling because it's reasonable because most of the properties in that residential categories are single-family dwellings. But of course, look at the color of cyan, blue, I don't know what the name is, but you can see, so the blue is the condo. So you can see since like around 2000, people start to flip condo as well, which didn't happen before.
Okay, so this map shows the geospatial representation of the previous slide. So it's also divided into 7-year intervals. And then so single family dwelling and residential dwelling with suites, and also condominiums are the main, or like the top 3 flipper property types. And then so basically the single family and residential dwelling with suite properties, they as the year passes by, they're more likely to be a flipper or year increases. And then starting from 1986, the condominium flippers are mostly concentrated in downtown areas. Oh yeah, and also the single family dwelling and the residential dwelling with suite property types are like, mostly dispersed throughout all of Metro Vancouver. Condominiums in downtown, there's a little bit of a cluster here in, I guess, western Richmond area. Yeah, so we want to know. Yeah, so users can select the year interval that they are interested in. So they can also select everything to see. So this is the year interval. So these are the list of flippers that are marked by this year interval. Yeah.
Okay, so in the end, we want to know, okay, what kind of strategy people are using to flipping their property. So that's where the redevelopment data comes in again. So focus on the city of Vancouver, since we have the redevelopment permit since 2017. We're trying to figure out what kind of permits are issued for those properties, flipping properties. And obviously the top one is addition and alteration. I think it's reasonable as it's the easiest and quickest way to flipping a property and resell it quickly on the market. But also surprisingly, you can see a lot of people are doing just build the new buildings and put on the market quickly as well. So I'm not quite sure if that's a convention, or common process in other cities as well. But I think it's important just to notice how what kind of categories are there in a permit.
Okay, so as part of our project, we also explore the Vancouver development demographics. Okay, so from 2017 to 2021, 2,358 properties were issued both demolition and new building permits. On this table to the right, we can see the properties for demolition and then the properties for new building. And the ones that are unhighlighted are the ones that actually remain the same in property use, but the ones that are highlighted show the ones that have changed the property use, and we see that a lot of them are actually like adding a secondary suite or a laneway house, or converting from one family dwelling to two family dwellings, or two family dwellings with secondary suites. So this is the distribution of new commercial buildings. We can see that the majority of them are in the downtown area and alongside the major transit routes. For example, the Canada Line or the 99 bus, or maybe even the future UBC SkyTrain extension. Yeah. And this is the distribution of the new residential buildings. So the map on the top is the distribution of new laneway houses, and this one, the map on the bottom is the distribution of one family dwelling with secondary suites. So we can see that the properties that have additional dwelling units, such as a laneway house or a secondary suite, and they're mostly concentrated on the eastern side of Vancouver. And this is again the distribution of new residential buildings. However, this time we have the one family dwelling and the two family dwelling on the bottom. And then we can see that there is a divide of some sort around the Main Street area, such that the majority of the new one family dwellings are on the west of Main Street, and the majority of the two family dwellings are on the eastern side of the Main Street. Okay, so this is the age of the properties that have been issued new building permits. So the map on the top is the residential properties, and the map on the bottom is the commercial properties. We can see that for both types of residential and commercial. This neighborhood, this highlighted neighborhood, which is the Grandview Woodland, has the highest average age. And we can also see that for the residential properties that have been issued like new building permits, they have lower average age in southern areas of Vancouver. However, there's no distinct pattern in the commercial properties.
Yeah, so these are some of the conclusions that we have derived from the observations during our research. So for the first part, the evolution of housing market, we can tell that the sale time interval of property increases with a drastic price change over time. And so we also learned that the commercial rental residence is really scarce. And so by our methods, we also identified 0.6% of the transactions are flippers. And then from the redevelopment data, many properties are adding additional dwelling units, and the distribution of the new building depends on the age, depends on the type of property used. So for future direction, we can try to link the data provided by BCA to other data, such as the income data, so that it allows us to measure housing affordability in a more precise way. And also the second one, we can try to discover the changes in the zoning. So thank you to everyone who's helped in our project.
Questions, comments, suggestions?
Any questions from the audience or online?
I guess I have kind of a generic question for all three of you. I was wondering if you might share with us something like surprising you learned, either about like the process or about housing in Vancouver throughout the project. Anything like unexpected that maybe you didn't think would happen when you do it?
Me personally, I honestly don't really know much about Vancouver housing market, except I know the price changed drastically over the time. But I suppose one of the results matched to my intuition is that the pricing started to increase drastically. We're accelerating since around 2010-ish. So that's my impression as well. So that I think the housing prices match that, right? Like a lot of them are increasing over 1.7 million or 1 million at least. So yeah, so to start with, I only know, the housing market are increasing over the time, but I never, or quite surprised on the scale of increase as well. Yeah, I think that's a surprising thing for me in terms of the content, but we have a lot of learned skill when we're like analyze data, especially cleaning data as well. Not sure if you're interested, but we can talk later after this.
Sure. Too many things to list, probably.
Exactly.
Sure.
I have a question. Obviously, you have the model. One thing that you probably can do is the future reduction is the strata insurance.
The shipping insurance?
Strata insurance. So that's specific to strata plan. Many of the condo properties you can capture, the asset, and somehow to do with strata insurance. Because all the condos are strata and SCRP. There is a crisis of strata insurance crisis going on right now. It's been going on for years now in BC. It's one of the most terrible crises in the housing market right now. It's a little bit niche, but looking into it, a lot of government agencies are looking at that strata insurance. That's also going to be very interesting when you overlay that strata insurance nonsense with the conflict that you have. By the way, the conflict that you have to do my factory resale, but it's okay, it's a small thing.
Yeah, so I just want to emphasize that rather apartment, we'll call it apartment because it's not personally owned, right? It's especially built for the rentals. So that what we captured there, 5,000 of them are not condo, right? It's for built for rentals. So people who live in there are not do not own that property. So
I know, but
renters.
somebody owns those apartments. So the owner of those condos, they have to pay condo insurance.
Right.
It's another complication, but I'm just saying, it might be something to look into.
Yeah, definitely.
When
So
you overlay that data with condo data.
yeah, definitely, because we also have actual condo data. So when people own it, perhaps that is that the same
So look, you
insurance.
guys, there's being high demand right now to the very topical political thing. Look into that.
Sure.
People will come to your doorstep, that's simple like that. That's just my comment. I feel at least 5 government agencies, local and professional level, are after that data, including nonprofits.
Mhm.
Are after that data. The second thing about speculation tax, tax, excuse me. I think the federal government is once again contemplating on that. Second, you guys don't have a sense of what it is anyway. It's a speculative tax on foreigners, foreign ownership of Vancouver. Okay. One of the professors in SMU, she's a leader in this specific area. She did something, UBC, I can't remember. There were some very interesting studies, because back in 2016 or 17, there was one round of speculation tax, right? And it generated some very interesting patterns that might just coincide with what was over there.
Yeah, I remember it started from 2016 or 17, the speculation.
Right.
It's pretty recent thing, right?
It's a recent thing, but now they're contemplating doing it again.
Okay. Yeah, so
what I'm saying is that data has some interesting policy implications.
yeah, definitely. I think we can definitely scoop some information from that data set. So one thing I want to add to that is the sales data we have is only the last 3 transactions. So it didn't really cover all of the sales happening in the history, but still we can use the subset sales for that information.
We have a question from Craig. Craig, please.
Hey everyone, there we go. Okay, should be fine now. I think it's Raymond's mic being on. Yeah. Okay, so great presentation. I'm wondering if you had by any chance looked into other characteristics of flipped properties. I saw that you kind of showed where they were located, but knowing that the data has at least some other variables such as number of bedrooms, bathrooms, square footage, sale price. Thanks. What else could you potentially look at as characteristics for flipped properties? I'm afraid I can't hear anything.
Here.
Can you hear me now, Kurt?
Yep. Thanks.
Hello?
Yeah, I can hear you now.
Hello? Or can you hear any sounds? Okay, I'm just start talking. Okay. Okay, I'm gonna start talking real loud. All right, so yeah, we haven't had a chance to clean that data because that's ton of data, and definitely in the future we can do that because really we want to focus. Like our initial plan is trying to focus on the comparison of commercial and residential. So what we did is calculating how the price changes across the time. So for example, are you sharing this slide? Yes. So we're trying to find the median price change in residential and commercial and compare them. but because the commercial doesn't really have much information, we drop them. But you can still see a difference between commercial and residential here. So commercial really just increase like really a lot across the time. But yeah, for the other attribute of flippers, we can definitely do that. But I think I should mention that the flipping index we're using is quite strict, and we perhaps need some external input of how those index are calculated or the quality of them. So once I guess we have a finalized flipping identities, we're able to look at those attributes more accurately and precisely. Yeah, so those were really just experimental analysis to see, okay, whether we can find any flippers by our definitions. Yeah, okay, did you hear me? Oh, okay. Good. Yeah, I can talk later after when you get more.
Any other questions?
John, comment.
So John, do you want to
No,
speak out your comments?
It's just an observation that since you were talking about the effect of the foreign tax, as I said in my note, we have a real estate agent here in Vancouver, and while he won't let us look at any places without planning to pay the extra 20%, he said that he's unaware of anybody that in the last couple of years that's actually paid that tax, and that most of the other agents that he's aware of, not in his firm, of course, just ignore it, and there's been no enforcement. So I don't know if that's true, and I don't know how that would affect the assumptions behind your analysis of flipping. I guess I do have a question, which is if you could get access to one additional data set, what would it be? I mean, what's the one gap that's of highest priority to you to be able to have more confidence in your results?
Yeah, we really wanted to have more demographics, for example, the income information to match with the owner of the properties, right? So one of the questions initially we want to answer is whether there are futuring happening in housing market. So futuring is the idea that when the property getting older, then a price may depreciate or decrease over the time, so that lower income people can own a property as the housing or the house depreciated over time. So we want to know that does this futuring happening and whether or not is this futuring a available or viable solution to this affordability crisis. In that way, it's important or it's useful at least to know the income of the owners. So in that way, we can compare whether the previous owner has higher income than the most recent owner. Yeah.
Yeah. I just wanted to add, I mean, in general, that's a problem on our wish list always. Sorry, I'm Julia. Supervising this project, and great job, great presentation. In general, a problem in housing research is that ownership or occupant data and property data is always separate for data privacy reasons, right? But actually, for a lot of the things that we want to know, we would ideally know the pairing between the occupant information and the property information to be able to speak more confidently about affordability issues. But for reasons of privacy, that's usually not available, that kind of data.
We have a question from Guy.
Yeah, Guy? Yeah. You could ask a question.
Thanks a lot. That was really interesting and very impressive. When you were asked about what sort of additional data you'd work with, I mean, I guess one interesting dimension to this would be understanding, what people, as you say, would be impacted. And if you had micro level data, it would be certainly interesting to look at at that, being able to tie incomes, et cetera, to people working with the properties. But I even just thinking spatially in terms of census data and trying to understand better, because you had some really, impressive variation across Vancouver in rates of change in pricing, et cetera, and just trying to understand, how many people and the characteristics of people in these, in these different sectors of the city are being affected differently, and then try to come out with sort of summary measures of inequality. How is this contributing to increasing divergence, and so that would be fascinating to do even at the aggregate level. But obviously that's a bigger project, and you've already done a tremendous amount. But very interesting work. Thanks for presenting.
Thank you. Really.
Yeah, I just have a question about your target audience. Is there any outcomes or some kind of advice you can give maybe for renters or the people who want to sell or buy property? It depends on who is the target audience for your project.
Yeah, I think to start with, because this is a huge data set, to start with, we don't really have much about, who's the target audience, but as we have seen some patterns, we really want to focus on the commercial rentals because we are a partner with the BC Nonprofit Housing Association. So what they're interested is on, the distributions of the commercial rentals and so whether, I guess they're trying to figure out whether some certain regions need more support or subsidized by looking at the geographical data. So I would think one of our target audience is more of the stakeholders or the policymakers. Of course, by looking at our data, you can tell a person or target person who may want to purchase a property, you can tell, okay, which area have the highest price increase and where you can buy the youngest, the newest buildings as well. Yeah, but really we're just focusing on more policy making side. So in the future, perhaps people who are working on this data set can have more general ideas from the cornerstone we have done.
So in the interest of time, we'll let Craig ask the last question, and then we will conclude. So Craig.
Sure. So first comments followed by a question. So the Canadian Housing Statistics Program by Statistics Canada has been doing a lot of work connecting across the country owners to properties. It is available through, we do have a project underway looking at the micro data. So there are productive research avenues. There's already data in place to start looking at that. So that could be a really interesting future project. In terms of looking at filtering in markets, I would say this is my own personal research approach that it's a pretty high bar to clear. Filtering in housing markets has been this sort of market solution for a very long time with very little empirical support for it. So it'd be really interesting to see if you could actually find something for it. My question is, would it be possible for you to map recent sales of particular property types around the province to look for hot spots of property transactions to identify, okay, there's a lot of activity happening here around this particular type of unit as a potential measure of, I'm not sure, the financialization or gentrification, who knows. And I mention that because, recently 80% of Northern housing was just transferred to a single entity. So there's a lot of activity happening in commercial rental real estate right now. So would it be possible to map sales hotspots?
Definitely. Yeah, so all of the map you've seen is they come with some table, the clean table we have used, right? So we have clean table on sales, on the attribute and everything. So the mapping is really just the last step of visualization. So yeah, you can manipulate the current data between cleaning and map it easily, for sure.
I just want to add to that. Actually, there were two parts of the project, which was one to just make data available that then you use to answer multiple research question, and then the second part is to actually explore some of the research questions. So this is just the first step of hopefully working on this data that we made available to us.
Yeah. Yeah, I think our major process was really cleaning data, and all the result you're seeing is just exploratory that will be fun. So I have tons of spreadsheet and CSV files that after cleaned.
So on that note, we will conclude the section, and I would just want to comment that housing is really a very complex topic. I think the analysis that you have seen today are really data about the properties, and we don't get into the owners, we don't get into the renters, and we don't get into the banking transactions, and then where the money is offshore and all of that kind of stuff. But the housing market is so complex that it is from ownership to renting, and in fact, obviously, it will link to homelessness. So all these different aspects of our society, it's really kind of concentrated in this so-called housing, and so this is why it's a fascinating project for us, and we are happy that we are working with a few researchers on this topic, and I have the feeling that we will continue to work on this maybe next year's DSSG. So with that, I thank everybody. At the beginning, I thank the funders, and I also thank the community partners. And I think I deliberately waited, for the end to obviously want to thank the students and the fellows, and it is a tremendous amount of job that they've done, and I just want to add that is added difficulty to be doing that. Everybody work from home, and doing a collaborative project of this kind with very diverse background, and then have never met each other before, and so what they really accomplished, within 14 weeks, it's really amazing. So I think we should give them a round of applause. Okay, thank you very much. Hope to see many of you next year.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye.